today we're going to learn a little bit about some concepts for combining data with Explore Analytics. We're not going to walk through the nuts and bolts of how to build these reports. I'll call out the videos that exist that cover how you can build them. We're really going to talk about how Explore Analytics approaches combining data so that you have the concepts in mind and you can find out more about how to combine data. So why are we talking about combining data? The answer is that if you've worked with building reports and analytics, you know that when you're trying to holistically solve an answer to a question, you're often dealing with data that is scattered in a number of different areas. So for example, incident management. You might use a system like ServiceNow that has incident, problem, SLAs, and changes all within the single data source, but scattered on different tables. Then you might have chat data or call data or customer data or legacy incidents that sit outside of ServiceNow in SQL or Oracle databases. And you might have something like an Excel spreadsheet that maps assignment groups to each other that you're using to informally put things together. Or to show another example, project management. Project management, you have actuals from project tasks and time cards, planned from resource plans and allocations. You might have sales data or costing data or other data that sits outside of ServiceNow. And again, you might have an Excel spreadsheet that's mapping the project codes to project names or to portfolios. And when you want to build a report, you kind of want to build that all into one report, one set of analytics, regardless of what table or what data source it's in. So with Explore Analytics, we're going to knock these walls down, and we're going to provide a single report interface for all of it. Now, if you're familiar with trying to do this today, the question is, well, how would you do it today? I think typically what really happens is a manager is asking for reports and you throw a pile of spreadsheets at it, right? The goal with Explore Analytics is not to create that sprawl of spreadsheets, but really have one real-time way of accessing it. Similarly, the other option that folks might use is to copy the data out, stick it in a data warehouse, build reports on top of that data warehouse. But that's going to require integrations to pull all the data into one place, a database expert to build out the universe, have a report writer build with code on top of that. And if you need to make a change, there's multiple steps in the process that might need to be changed and more places where things can break, higher levels of skill required. Or with ServiceNow, what we see is customers doing the same thing, only instead of a data warehouse, they use ServiceNow. They build out custom tables in ServiceNow, import all the data into many, many tables on ServiceNow. If they need to join data from two different tables, they just create another custom table in ServiceNow and write some JavaScript to stick it. So you get this bloat of many, many tables and custom fields that you're maintaining. So we want to break you free from all of that. We want to create a sustainable reporting solution, something that's not going to require manual work, not going to require copying and duplicating data into or out of different systems, no writing of code, and no making administrative changes to ServiceNow or to databases that are going to require change requests and things like that. So with that in mind, Explore Analytics is going to help you combine data in a very simple and intuitive way. And there's three concepts that we use to do that. We have the mashup, we have the lookup, and we have filters and slicing. And I'm going to go a little bit into examples of each, but again, remember there's more detailed videos on each concept that you can follow up with to really get a better sense of how to take advantage of it. The first and most powerful is the mashup. So what is the mashup? A mashup is when you want to combine two or more existing reports to create one report with multiple data sets. Again, in an example, if you're looking to put together incidents and changes together to correlate them, or if you want to put data that sits on your plan table and your actual hours table to create a resource report, that's where you're going to want to combine this together. And I want to emphasize that's two different approaches of combining. One is presenting multiple data sets together. So for example, a timeline where you want to correlate the data. Another is when you have calculations or combinations where you need pieces of information that sit on multiple tables that are going to be inputs to some additional analytic. Let's see what I mean. I'm going to give you one example of each. So let's start with presenting multiple data sets together. Here's our hypothetical. How many incidents and calls have we at the service desk received by month? The data we need is going to be the number of incidents and the number of calls. Typically, incidents would sit on, say, the incident table in ServiceNow. Calls might be sitting in a call system like a Cisco call system or an Avaya call system, right? We don't want to copy all the call data into ServiceNow. We don't want to create a data warehouse and suck these around. We want to report on each of those where they are. So assuming Explore Analytics has been given access to both the incidents and the calls, first I'm going to create a report on the incident table. So you can see here I've created a report on the ServiceNow data source for the incident table that is a trend of incidents per month. Then I create another report on the calls table in a MySQL database called Explore that has the calls, again, per month. You'll see here that these are two timelines, and they have a common dimension. In this case, timelines always have a common dimension, which is time, but we're going to look for something that allows Explore Analytics to know how to put them together. But all I had to do is create these reports using our intuitive drop-down interfaces, and then say, hey, create a mashup view. Combine these two reports that I've created into a single report. And my result is this. It's a timeline that's showing me incidents and calls by month. So this is an example of presenting multiple data sets together in a very quick and easy way. This is a real-time report, and it's displaying data from two different data sources, ServiceNow and Explore Analytics. Again, I didn't have to pull data from one system into another. Explore Analytics is querying both. And if you see our deep dive video specifically around mashups, there's going to be even more information about that. So other examples are, you can do this to combine data within the same process as well. So for example, incidents open, closed, and backlog. Using advanced calculations in Explore Analytics like a TP 50, 90, 99 report that's using the 50th, 90th, and 99th percentile. Or you could have a trend job that's capturing multiple metrics. So for example, the total CIs, the stale CIs, the incomplete CIs, displaying that in a single pivot. Here the common dimensions are category, class, and location, and we're combining together these kind of multiple sets of data together. So this is an example where you're presenting multiple sets of data. You create those individual reports and you combine them together. Now let's talk about calculations with multiple inputs. What's great is the tactic you're going to use is going to be exactly the same. The question we want to answer is what types of assets had the most incidents per asset? Now obviously we could go and see what individual assets had the most incidents by grouping on the incident table, but we want to normalize this, right? If we have, for example, more MacBook Pros than Dell laptops, obviously we might have more incidents. So we want to see per the number of assets, how many incidents. So we need the number of incidents from the incident table and the number of assets from the asset table. So you can see that we're going to take the same strategy. We have two individual reports, one on the asset table looking for the number of assets, and another on the incident table that's showing the number of incidents, and they're both grouped by a common dimension. One is the asset model, same here. Now, one thing for the experienced ServiceNow administrators that you might notice from this filter is that actually on this table we're dot walking configuration item dot asset dot model, whereas here we're using the model field. All I had to do was relabel them. So long as the report has the matching labels, we'll be able to combine this together. Again, more detail in the mashup video. But what it means is that you don't need to have identical data structures for this to work. We do the same thing of combining these reports together. They have different quantities, so the values, one is going to be assets, one is going to be incidents. So when we combine the two reports together, that common row grouping, which is the asset model, gets merged. But the individual values, the number of incidents and the number of assets, are both brought into this report, similar to what we saw with presenting data together. But now you can see we're using Explore Analytics' formula capabilities to take those two independent data points and do calculations against them. So for example, incidents divided by assets gets you the incidents per asset. Secondly, I, in this report, put a little cost per incident hidden field in, so I could do the incidents per asset now times that hidden cost per incident field to get an overall cost of incidents. That means I can not only see how many incidents were per asset, but, what's the financial implications of that? So there might be a type of asset that's, might have a few more problems, but pays for itself by being a cheaper asset. I don't know until I run this report. So again, what's really key here is we're taking two different pieces of data from different tables in real time, bringing it together, showing that calculated value and that calculated cost of incidents. Next, we have a lookup. This is a different approach to combining data together. Here, what we have is starting from a list report, we want to pull an associated value. Starting from a list report, we want to pull an associated value from another table. This is very useful when you need to bring in that information before aggregating. So for example, there's reference data in another data source, and you want to be able to group by that. I think it'll be a little more clear when you see an example, but this lookup is another very powerful way of looking at things. So let's suppose we're trying to answer the question of how many CIs do we have by category. Now, out of the box in ServiceNow, there is no category that's associated with CIs. Instead, there are classes, and what we did was we have a spreadsheet that maps the CIs to these categories, right? So again, this is an example of where you're supplementing the data in ServiceNow to group or to tag information and leverage that in a report. So the number of CIs is from the CI table in ServiceNow, and the spreadsheet mapping CIs to category is an Excel spreadsheet that we've uploaded to Explore Analytics. And what we want to do is be able to look up based on the class to add that category to the data set. And that's where this lookup comes in. So you see it uses a lookup, it uses a list calculation, this lookup function, to say, okay, using the class field in this data set, go to the Explore data source, find that table called CI category mapping, and then based on that class, matching this class to this class, look up the category field, and now you can see that that category column is available in that report. Once we have that, we can use something called composite views, which I won't discuss in this video, but you should go and find out more, to turn that list with that calculation into a table that we can run reports on. So this is a report against the CI table in ServiceNow, and I want to stress again that this is a real-time report that's directly against the data, but it's grouped by that category that we looked up on this other table. So instead of showing a pie chart with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little slices for each different class of CI, we're now showing something that's a lot more user-friendly, showing that 76% of our devices are end-user devices. It allowed me to extend and enhance the data that's in ServiceNow without having to create a custom column, without having to create custom tables in ServiceNow. Maybe this isn't something that's relevant to everyone. It's just something I'm building for my report. I can just upload a spreadsheet and extend that reporting. Another example is lookup aggregate, which does a query and just counts on another table. So this is an example from our project management pre-built analytical application where we're using a lookup aggregate to say, hey, for this project, count the number of risks that are attached to that project, and do the same for issues. So it's also doing a lookup. In this case, it's a lookup just to count those related records. So that's the lookup. The last, and I think the most straightforward, but worthwhile considering, is the ability to use these capabilities while filtering or slicing. So for example, this is a dashboard that's using filters and slicers. These filters and slicers, which you can learn about more in our dashboard and slicers video, pass parameters into these individual reports. But the the parameters aren't tied to what are in the individual reports. You can pass through any relevant information. So in this case, we're using that same category and CI mapping to pass these categories into those individual reports to filter them based on class. So again, we're using a mapping table to filter on all of these CI reports. I won't go into depth around this, but this is actually an example using our CMDB analytical application with pre-built data quality reports, so you can find out more about that there. Another example is using a special type of filter that we call the filter lookup. And again, I'm going to continue using this example of that mapping table so that you can see the power. Again, this is a report on the CI table, and we want to filter only where the classes match the lookup. The lookup goes to that category mapping, finds the class, and says, okay, bring us back only the ones where the categories are, business service, applications, infrastructure, network, and storage, based on the class that's mapped to that category. So we're using that same table we saw before, only now as a filter. As we've seen, there's a lot of different approaches for combining and putting together data, whether it's using the mashup to combine multiple sets of data for either presenting together or calculations, the lookup about reaching out and grabbing a value from a reference area to be able to add additional data to your data set, or filtering and slicing of one data set based on another data set. Again, there are individual videos that go deeper into all of these subjects, as well as many other videos on this channel that show some of these in action applied for specific use cases. But I think this is a really powerful starting point to be able to get to where you can combine those data without manual work, without copying data, without writing code, and without making administrative changes. Thank you, and good luck combining your data.